Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Grieving Voices. Today, my guest is Carolina Sotomayor. She is a fertility Reiki womb healer serving women who are trying to conceive. She's the founder of Make a Baby membership, a monthly membership providing monthly live Reiki healing Zoom calls, Reiki guided meditations, pre recorded healing modules, and master classes. Carolina has personally coached and helped women all over the world with over 100 Reiki babies into bringing over 100 Reiki babies into the world. She is attuned to 4 different lineages of Reiki and is a proven medium connecting mom to their spirit babies. After conceiving her own son with Reiki, Carolina has been on a mission to help women conceive with energy healing and heal through pregnancy and postpartum. I'm so excited to have you here because this is a unique line of work. And Reiki isn't unique, but I love how you've adapted it and have wielded its power for good and positive in your own life, but also in the lives of others. So thank you for the work that you're doing, bringing motherhood and parenthood to over 100 people now.
It's been exciting. Thank you so much for having me. I it was I believe in divine timing, intervention happening. And for me, Reiki was when it was happening to me and offered to me, I didn't know it would end up here. So for me, I was struggling to conceive and I was a newlywed, very much a struggling newlywed, married to the best man I had ever known and still happily married to. But we were not getting pregnant. There was nothing wrong with me. They said, "You're just really sad." So I started grief therapy, still not getting pregnant. And then I plateaued in my healing journey with her. And she's like, "You need to either do Reiki or get on an antidepressant," because I was still the sad girl. Uh, Also, at that same time, I had fallen off my horse and I was put on medical leave. That conversation of like, you need to do Reiki or try antidepressants because the trauma wasn't leaving my body. I was still sad after had going for her for over a year and a half, sometimes twice a week. It was definitely weekly. Um, and essentially she wanted me to get Reiki because one, I was like, I'm purifying my body. I'm not on birth control. Like, I don't want to put anything else in my body. And that's just a personal decision. I support anyone that if you do what's best for you and your medical team. Um, so that same week, because I had suffered a concussion from falling off my horse, I went to my favorite psychic in town where I was taking workshops, and she had offered uh she's like, "Your throat and your sacral plexus chakras are blocked. You need Reiki. You don't need any crystals for your concussion." And I was like, I don't know. I'm not ready yet. But then the therapist that same week had recommended it, and there are two separate sources not related to each other. So I was like, wait a minute, what is this? So I went with, because I was still very medically inclined at that point. And I went and got Reiki the next week. And then the next month, we were testing positive with our son, Ollie, who's now almost 8. He's 7, second grader. And I continued to get Reiki through my pregnancy, and it helped me with my anxiety. I had prenatal anxiety. I had my gallbladder removed, I totaled my car. And had my gallbladder removed within a week of each other. Ollie very much is a miracle baby. Had a really traumatic birth. Um, because of the birth trauma and just the way that the hospital handled everything, Ollie ended up in NICU. I had a nasty infection. Ollie had an infection from a prolonged labor. My Reiki master sent me Reiki during that time. My postpartum was very tumultuous with just a lot of irrational thoughts. And I just got diagnosed with severe PPA and PPD, which is postpartum depression anxiety. Um, and through my postpartum, I really leaned into the talk therapy and the Reiki as a combination. And it took me about 18 months to fully come out of it. But because of the consistent support of both together, that helps me come out of the darkness, is what I like to say. It allowed me to function. I stayed home with him for 4 months. At 6 months, postpartum, I got certified in Reiki 1 and 2, levels 1 and 2, which gives you the ability to give yourself Reiki and others. And I started to give Reiki to myself and my son. He suffered from chronic ear infections. Um, I had mastitis several times. So I would give Reiki to myself. And I would in support of my breast milk supply, because it's all heart chakra based. And I became sad again. I was sad because I had not gotten the birth that I wanted to. We knew we only had one child and I had lost my shot. I was grieving the loss of that positive birth and everything I had worked for. And when people say, "Well, you just have a healthy baby, wasn't it worth it?" I was like, "No, that's bullshit." Like I got this was a one-time rite of passage moment for a woman, and I did not get what I had painted or I had written down in my size 9 font birth plan, and my birth plan had gone sideways. So I spent a big majority of my time reliving my birth in that 18 months, and that's what plagued me in my darkness. And I was fine taking care of baby. I was happy as a clam as long as I was with him, but there'd just be these moments of things that went wrong with my birth that plagued me. And like just certain things that were very violent in my birth that were unexpected and just really shook me. And it took me a long time to come out of, but it was because of the Reiki that I learned how to heal myself. I learned about energetics truly in my postpartum of like things that erupted from my childhood, that because I was so sleep deprived and I was so tired and I was just really at my most raw, your mind can sometimes unlock things that you were not prepared to face again or remember even that they occurred at all the first time. So in my postpartum, I felt like my childhood abuse and my traumas just kind of exploded, and my wound healing really started was as the postpartum. I had an abortion in my 20s. I had been raped in my 20s. My and that really plagued a lot with my birth trauma, and combined was really, really messy and really dark, along with a lot of like worth issues and my dad's death, like really missing him and really trying to like have this baby, and my favorite person died, and I really wish he was here, the one person that I was so close to. How can I exist in a world where I have this beautiful baby and I don't have him to share it with? It was a lot. But with Reiki and being able to heal myself, it was more about moment by moment as those things came up, because it didn't all happen at once. It was riding the wave and understanding that it's okay to feel what you feel, but it's about releasing it and understanding, okay, what do I need to do to get back to what's really important? And putting boundaries around my grief. I learned that was there's it's okay for me to put a pause on things so I can still be a working mom and be present where I need to be present, but then also create space and time where I get to feel those feelings, honor them, and release them. Because I was still working a manufacturing job. I was in pharmaceutical manufacturing. It was a very demanding job, breastfeeding, pumping, and picking him up from daycare. And that was a very real thing, breadwinner of the family. I still had to be a person. So that was the main thing, is that Reiki would allow me to be grounded enough to function, but also I could go deeper when I needed to. And that's really the gist of it. That was long.
What do you say to those people listening that say, "Well, I don't have time. I don't have time to for energy healing work or take, it's we are in this Western society that's
Mm,
go,
yeah.
go, 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 go." So, I mean, I know the answer. Like, we just have to make our self-care non-negotiable. But how did you what I mean, how did you do that? Like what did that look like? Like what how did you decide that?
I have chills. It's very easy. Either you make the time and you prioritize yourself, or whatever you believe in will make you. Life will make it happen for you, or the universe, or God, whatever is your belief. There was a term I once heard and say, God smack you. Like God will smack you if you don't do it first. Like he'll show you signs of what you need to do, or the universe will send you hints. And if you don't take care of it yourself, they'll put you in an adult timeout, is what I was calling it. When I fell off my horse, that was the first time I was forced physically to sit still in my entire life. I did not know it at the time, but I was in fight or flight. And it was the first time that I had to sit still. Couldn't be on a phone. I couldn't drive. I had depth of perception, like with my vision, like my foot would miss the curb because of my concussion. I had fallen in a ditch off my horse, and and I had memory problems. So I couldn't drive, couldn't be on the iPad, couldn't read. My eyes couldn't focus on a page. I would get dizzy, and I couldn't remember the numbers. They would say, okay, here's a series of numbers, say them backwards, and I couldn't do it. So I was out of work for 8 weeks. And that is when Reiki was introduced to me. And I lived in a one floor apartment. So it was very safe for me. But basically I just sat there and I would welcome anyone that would come and sit with me because I couldn't do anything else. But often the time people were busy. So I was doing that 8 weeks that I got to sit alone with myself and learn to really be okay with that because there's really nothing else to do. And that was my opinion, God saying, hey, you've been running and you can't run away from your feelings anymore. Your dad died, your horse died, and you're married. And you want to have a baby. You need to feel your stuff. And that was the first time that I was open to really making a shift of when she had the conversation with me and the Reiki was offered to me. And then I had the Reiki session, and my husband, he had to drive me and pick me up. And I came out, I felt like I was floating. I had remembered, I was like, it was the first time that I had a huge shift in my energy. I felt like this 50-pound boulder, ever since my dad had died, had been lifted from my chest. And that was something that changed for me. So for me, it's my opinion. What I tell my clients is pay attention to the patterns and the signs. Either take care of it yourself, or something will happen where it will cause you to. And sometimes that looks different for me. I was able to recover from the concussion, and I went back to work, and I went back to work and I was pregnant. Um so or some people get sick. Physical illness is a manifestation of something, of a stuck emotion in your body. And we are conditioned to stuff our emotions and not release them. Our emotions last for 90 seconds, but we have to be consciously trained. Like we have to be trained. We have to consciously be mindful of, do I want to keep this? Am I ready to release this? Or are we going to release it? Um, and I think that, I mean, that's something I'm constantly reminding my son of like, okay, breath work. We're going to release this. Are you ready to release it? No, I'm still mad. Okay, let's hold on to it a little bit longer. Check in. Are you ready to release this? And like, this is me breaking that cycle with him. You don't have to hold on to it. So that prevents disease in him, that prevents, infertility issues in him and them getting stuck in his womb, because men have wombs too. And our emotions can get stored anywhere in our body, but the most common concentrated area are our wombs, is that particular chakra. And infertility is just a really stuffed emotional reservoir that needs to be released, is what I find. So either take care of it yourself, or I think you will be made to. I do know that from all of my work, there is a pattern. When people say, oh, I just don't have time to heal, obviously it's not a priority for them. Well, we have to look at a couple of things why it's not. Either they're putting other people before themselves, um, or they're too scared. to do it at the moment. And both are that is just a valid, those are things that people do. However, I ask you is, who is more important than you? And who is going to save you when you do have that life moment of when you're in hospital, or you fall off your horse, or you have that car crash, or you are whatever? Who's going to fix your body in that moment? They might be able to bring you soup. They might be able to take your kids to the park. They might be able to do some grocery shopping for you to help you out a little bit. But you are the most important person in your life. And I really believe that in your relationship with yourself. In when people don't prioritize themselves, it's a lack of worthiness. For me, is the root cause is like you don't feel worthy to prioritize yourself, or they have to prove or earn their worthiness to put themselves first. Like, so if they do need to have a break or they need to have energy healing, well, I have to do this entire to-do list before I actually earn that timeout or that relief. And for me that's an indicative thing of like you learned something in your childhood where you had to earn rest, you had to earn healing, and that is not correct. I will battle anyone for that. Healing is your birthright. Rest is your birthright. You are born worthy of being happy, and your life is not meant to suffer. Will we suffer? Yes, but it does. And how we move through that is really a choice, in my opinion. So for me is like where are you who are you prioritizing? And for me as a mom, I had to learn, because I burnt myself several times out, is the more that I put myself first and I am pouring from a full cup, the happier my son is, the better my marriage is, the happier my partner is, the calmer and more emotionally regulated my house is. Because for us, I'm the heartbeat of the house. So if if I'm dysregulated, if I'm angry, if I'm super upset, if I'm depressed, all shit's going haywire. So that's my, when I put it in that frame, is like everyone else is going to thrive when you thrive. When you are and when they see you actively caring for yourself and prioritizing yourself, that is teaching them that they need to do the same. Like my little says, I need alone time. I've had enough of you. I need alone time, please. And he goes in his room or he goes in his reading corner. Legit, bro, that's good. Like that is like that's generational breaking actively. So it's not just like you're not going to get rewarded for burning yourself out or putting yourself last. Actually, you're going to condition people to know that's how you want to be treated.
And then you'll end up in the hospital or in an
Sick.
accident or
Yeah.
all of
And
these
that's
things.
that's just my lived life experience. I'm 41. So um I still think I'm 20, but I mean, I've lived a little at this point and seen a lot. And human design, if you're into that, I'm a projector. So I am meant to guide. But as a healer, regardless of your human design projector or not, as a healer, and you take on that occupation or that hat in a lifetime, you have to live through some things so that you can be at least one or two steps ahead to provide enough wisdom or insight for the people that are going to go through the same things you did, which means you have to live, fall down, and crash and burn, um, have your heart broken, be stabbed a couple of times, um, emotionally.
Are you a 4
That
6?
I'm a 3-5.
3 5. That was my second. That was my second
I'm a 3-5.
one.
I'm a 3-5. I teach human design in my membership to use to help manifest better for your babies.
Ooh.
So, yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just the arrow at the top. It's a point left or point right. And then looking at your defined centers. But um, that's how I think about it. Is like the what's asked, like, okay, so I don't have time, but where are you putting your time? As an entrepreneur, over the past year, I have looked at sales, I've looked at revenue and things like that. And I was like, where am I really why do I no have time to do the things that do make money? I had to identify the things that did make money and what was I doing? I had to perform an audit. The things that don't make me money are not important. The things that do make me money and create impact on my audience, those are the things I'm going to spend 80% of my time on. The other things don't matter. I don't even do them anymore. So, where are you spending your time? Who's consuming it? And how much of it do you have left over as a current state? And why are those people more important than you and your well-being?
I love that because energy is currency, right? It is,
Oh, yes.
and
I like
we
to put it as the word is attention. Who has your attention?
do a self audit, right?
Self-audit.
Mhm.
Do an inventory. You'll be surprised.
I just want to touch on too something that you said that, how physical things manifest, and that is completely true. Like in the work that I do is in grief recovery, and what I've learned about grief and my own story and the stories of
Right.
people that I've been on my podcast and that I've worked with, when we look at our lives like, okay, fender benders, falling
Mm.
off a horse, accidents, um, missteps, um, just, if you're kind of known to be the clumsy person, or um, and physical manifestations, right? Migraines or body pain that has no explanation, like fibromyalgia, things like this. Like, this is grief, friends. This is grief. What is it that you are holding on to that you are unwilling to let go of, or that your body is screaming to you to be energetically released? And so you touched on it growing up, but can we dive deeper into what you
I'm an
said?
open book. Go for it. I love
Yeah.
having these deep conversations.
So growing up, you haven't mentioned your mom,
Mm.
and sometimes the mother wounds can be attached to the mom. Um, but can you elaborate what your childhood was like?
Oh, sure. It's funny. We talk about the mother wound a lot in fertility, father wound too.
Mm.
Um, I have recently put a lot of effort into my mother wound because I spent a lot of like the past decade healing my father wound. My childhood was, um, I was, it was very tumultuous. It's very chaotic, full of different people. My parents got separated when my dad gave my mom an ultimatum and he didn't want a third child. I was the third child. She chose to keep me and they got divorced formally when I was 11 months old and she moved from Florida to Pennsylvania and she was a single mom that eventually just stopped. She stopped growing at that point emotionally. And from what I have learned from my healing with a lot of therapy, hypnosis, and a shaman and Reiki is my mom was ill equipped to be a single mom of three children that had a magnitude of issues individually. And she is an active functioning alcoholic um, with anger issues and the most unhealed person I've ever met. But I have learned that, and what have grown to deeply appreciate and love for her is she's the ultimate survivor. And what I have identified her life purpose was to endure and survive so that I could launch from there. And that and appreciating and seeing her as a person has allowed me to see her more as my mom instead of I used to call her I won't share her name, but I used to call her by her first name. And that was because it was easier for me to just use that. It was really hard because of all of the things that had been done, said, and uh, it was really difficult for me to use the word mom. So I would call her by her first name. She's actually coming to visit next week. But my childhood was with her. And then my brother and sister both, my brother graduated high school, went into the military. My sister decided she wanted to live with my dad at age 14. Um, and I was young. I was kindergarten, first grade when all this happened, and they dipped, and I was alone. So I was an only child from early elementary age. And then I left her at age 15 to went to live with my dad. And I graduated high school and did college in Florida. And then I moved to Nebraska when I was when I was 29. So that's pretty much my span. But when I went from a single mom household to a single dad, it was not without abuse. My dad never hit me, but I didn't know what emotional abuse was, or mental abuse, um, or financial abuse. I just didn't know any of those things until probably I got married, and I started with a different therapist, and I didn't know he was a narcissist. But I felt safe with him because he didn't hit me. So I identified abuse as physical abuse, as like, oh, he didn't hit me. Oh, this is what safety is. At least it's calmer. He doesn't yell. Um, but it was very controlling. He would wait in my parking lot at soccer practice. He would wait during prom. He drove me there, waiting in the hotel parking lot, picked me up. It was there was no independence. Wanted to pick my college classes for a semester. I mean, just very controlling Latino dad, but like beyond normal. So I went from being abused and trying to avoid conflict and trying to be perfect straight A student to you have to be perfect straight A student. This is what you have to live up to. This is what your sister did. You're the only child here in the house again. And he hadn't been a parent for a long time because my sister had been out of the house. My sister and my brother are like 10 and 12 years older than me. And that is really significant for me because it was again feeling unwanted, hearing the story of like, you've never been wanted by him. I chose to keep you, but then you're not like very loving or wanted. And then going to, well, you're only here because there's nowhere else to put you. And you and your mom obviously are not getting along. That was an understatement. So it was a lot to work through and feel very much a man abandoned and neglected emotionally, even physically. We were on food stamps. When I lived with my mom, we were the family that went to the pantry. And I remember getting like this large thing of bologna and cheese. And I learned to slice the bologna at a really young age to make bologna sandwiches. I learned how to make my own, like, I knew how to use the stove, and she was gone a lot. We lived in a trailer on some land next to her sister and her husband. And her husband was really nice, but he made it very clear that, we were visitors. And we lived there from 1 to 15. But I could kick you guys out anytime. So there was not a strong feeling of being wanted anywhere. And that was something I really struggled with. It affected my self-esteem. I felt very ugly, got bullied a lot. It was not a very easy time in my life, for sure. But what I do take away from all of those things was what not to do. I knew for a long time, like during my teenage years, early 20s, I was like, I don't want to be a parent. I don't want to get married. But then I matured, I healed, I got into therapy in college. I took advantage of those services, and I just learned like some of the shit that happened to me was really fucked up. And it wasn't my fault because I got blamed for everything. This is the youngest. You're the one who broke up the family. And that's a huge reason. Like, I just don't get along with my siblings. They're both toxic. They think I'm toxic, and that's okay. I haven't seen them since we settled my dad's estate, and that's okay. I wish them well, and I didn't used to. I wish them well. I don't know anything about their lives. They've never been to my wedding. They don't know anything about my husband or my son. And that's okay. Like, I have peace and neutrality about that decision. I'm not emotionally charged where I'm like, I hate you. No, go do you. And I appreciate you. Boundaries are set for a reason. You don't want me. I don't want you. And it is for valid reasons. I feel like they find me threatening because I still talk to my mom and they are no contact with her. And they blame her for a lot, but they had very different life experiences. They grew up with them as a married couple with two parents in a home for part of their lives. I have no memory of them being married. I have no memory or life experiences other than two people who created a child that they accidentally made and they both equally hated each other. My brother and sister grew up in a home where my mom was a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home mom, and they had barbecues with my grandpa and visits with my dad's parents from Ecuador, and my mom cooking and birthday parties in the backyard. And it was the same house I lived in with him, but very different life experiences. And I respect that. So they have a very different emotional feeling in regard for my mom. But I did learn about emotional availability because of my siblings. I learned what it's like to not be emotionally available to people. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I mean. I don't want to be shut off from people. I want to be united with people. So that was a key thing that I learned at a very young age was I want to be emotionally available. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be accessible so I can connect with people. I don't want to feel cold. And that's essentially what I took away from that. But I think that it was not it was not an easy childhood. That's for sure.
And this is a perfect example of how growing up in the same home, you have a very different perspective and a different lens of how you look at life. And
Mhm.
because all relationships are unique, even if you would have all grown up in this at the same in the same time frame in the same home, you still would have had your own perspectives, your own personal
Right?
experiences because your relationships would have been unique. And this is what the word that comes up for me as I was hearing you share was shame.
A lot of shame. That's still something I struggle with. I feel like I apologize a lot or so there's guilt and shame still. Like shame that I went through this, shame that I don't talk to them. That's still something I have not fully healed or even like that's a new one for me. I just discovered that probably I saw a TikTok maybe 8 months ago, less than a year ago, and it was like shame. I was like that's an emotion I haven't danced with yet. Um
And it's insidious.
Right. So it is that would be probably next tier of healing that I would need to do, but definitely a lot of shame because there was a lot of embarrassment. There was a lot of things that shouldn't have happened that did happen and that were real and that were hidden. Um, a lot of secrets. Yeah,
And secrets really are what keep people separate.
very, very.
Um, Thank you for sharing all
You're
of
so
that.
welcome.
Um, and all of that being said, with your father passing and your siblings kind of creating this unpleasant environment because you said they sued the estate.
Mhm.
At the same time, you're trying to conceive a child. Would you agree? And what would you say to or add to this idea that grief is often like what blocks us from greatness in our lives?
100% grief was the number one thing that blocked me from conceiving. And once I started to feel safe after he had passed is what was the result of that one Reiki session. I was able to conceive because what I associated my dad with at that point in my life, not anymore, but at that point, I had related safety with my dad. And he was the person that I had sought. So I because there was an abandonment wound there from him, and little girls want their daddies. For particularly for me, I wanted to be a daddy's girl. And once we reconnected, I had to work really hard to keep his attention. And once he died, I was like, I don't have that safety anymore. Because when I did have his attention and when we were good and we were on speaking terms, I felt safe. I felt whole. I felt like I had everything I needed. And then, and I feel like death is very bizarre. Like a person that would call me every day or would pick up every day and send me an email, and the emails were, "Dear little girl." Um, they stopped. And it was so weird because the people I had lost prior to that, they didn't have consistent communication. They weren't active in my life the way my father was up till his death. Um, and having to write the check for his cremation, it was all very surreal. Like, it's just so weird that they go from existing and talking to like they weren't here at all, except some things. So,
Was it unexpected?
he had colon cancer and he had stopped going to the doctor. He had a large mass on the side of his belly, and never would go to the doctor. So what happened was I was in Nebraska. He was in Florida. He took a taxi to the hospital, checked himself into the emergency room. They admitted him. I got an accidental call from a person from his cell phone, and she was speaking Spanish. And I said, "Who is this?" I was working in my cubicle, and the lady said, "This is your dad's nurse. He's in the hospital." And then she hung up. And then my dad called back, and I was like, my dad had never been with another woman since my mom. So I was like, who is this? I mean, it was a very strange occurrence. Like, my dad was always alone, or he was like, he had never been with another person. So for another person to have possession or even to speak on his cell phone was very alarming. So, and as he goes, "I'm fine." I'm like, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm fine." I was like, "Where are you?" And he's like, "I'm in the hospital." I'm like, "Tell me everything." And it took a couple of phone calls of me harassing because he hung up on me. And I called back and he's like, "I'm in the hospital." I flew out the next morning. And he was very sick. And I had seen him 2 months prior, and he did not look well. And I said, "We should go to the doctor." No, he was very much not, he was a very independent, strong-minded person that could not be influenced by anyone. And so he slowly declined over the next 3 weeks from there. He, got a colonoscopy, and the colon cancer had metastasized to his liver and, all over, and he passed away. He went into hospice, and I was in a cot next to him the night he had passed. The ladies came in at 6 a.m. to check on him. I sat up, and then they said, "He's taking his last breath." And then that was it. And it was like 6 a.m. on April 6th. Um, I got to stay in, it was a Catholic hospital, it was really beautiful. And I said, that's all he wanted was for me. Like, he had stopped talking, but he knew, he's like, "I know this is gonna happen." He's like, "I just want us to be in a space where we can be together." He didn't want me staying in a hotel. Um, I've been staying with friends and in a hotel, and he goes, "I just want you with me." He's so worried about money. And he's like, "Just stay with me." And I was like, "Okay." But it took me a while to get him in out of the hospital into a private hospice. So we were able to do that the last 2 days, but the last night I was able to finally get a cot, and I sat next to him, and I slept next to his bed, and they were so nice. Um, and I just remember them coming in, and it was like so fast, and I just sat up and I was like stunned. And I just started making phone calls at that point. Just really like texted my brother. It's like, "You need to come. He's gone." And then like texting like my, I call her my fairy godmother. Like, she used to be my old boss. And I was like, "Rosa, you need to come." And and my best friend's dad was incredible support to me. I was like, "I need you to come." and they came, and then I had to handle the cremation, and uh, just having people that didn't have to be there, that were just really looking out for me. Because as a 30-year-old, I didn't know what to do. No one tells you, like, my best friend's dad, he taught me how to drive. And he's like, come with me. You can't see him be bagged. Come with me. We're gonna go to another floor. And I was like, I just need to be with him. I need to be with him to the end. And he goes, he's already gone. You can't unsee those things. And this is not your place. I'm being your dad. And I'm just like, and I was like, okay. Because you can't unsee those things. Like, I had changed his diaper, and I had fed him, and I was making all of his phone calls and all of his demands and running all of his errands during the time that he was awake. And it was very messy, and he was very angry. And um, I'm so grateful that I didn't see that. Cause, like, you're just, yeah, I feel like during those moments, I was so blessed by these two caring people who were really looking out for me. So when there was so much against me with my siblings, and I was a naive 30-year-old who was just trying to take care of her dad, who had no idea what the hell she was doing.
Do you
So,
think a lot of this experience taught you how you needed to be loved?
oh yeah. And it's a huge reason of why I live my life now. Like, I live intentionally slower. Um, we live a very simple life because it allows us to have a more regulated nervous system. My nervous system is more regulated, I have more capacity for emotions and to be careful and mindful of how I want to love myself and others, because that takes effort, because it's very easy for me to default to angry, controlling, yelling. I think it takes more effort to not do those things when you are ingrained, DNA coded, trauma lived, to to resist those responses until those responses are no longer an urge or the reactiveness. It, I may spend the rest of my life resisting those urges, um, or even, like, wanting to hit. I that not like because I was hit. Like, that's, you don't know until you're in those situations. Like, the way you were treated, it takes so much effort to undo. And because my husband comes from such a different background, it's a lot of conversation. So I have learned, like, what are my triggers, and what do I need to stay in this embodiment of the life that I want? What are the absolute non-negotiables that I must have to exist so that I can love myself, I can live in a state of being. And it's taken a lot of, like, trial and error, and a lot of discussions, and a lot of commitment to, I'm worth this, I'm worth the effort. So
And
it's not just like, I'm going to choose to be happy, not going to be angry. No, it's also like decluttering your house and making sure there's systems, and that I have a ritual in place. Like, so when I am triggered, we have safe words, and the safe words are, for a place. My kiddo has one, and that's like an immediate, okay, let's go have a talk. Do you want to leave? And it's just like, and it's like, my husband and I have a saying, there's a reason why there's two of us. I'm like, I need a timeout. I'm tapped out. And that they're like, we have words for that. So it's just an immediate, like, attention grabber. And it's because I love myself enough that I don't have to suffer, and I don't have to endure, and that my life can be full of love, and I can give my son that different life.
what I hear you saying is that communication,
It's huge. We over communicate. I think over communication in our marriage has been very good. It's been really helpful. I think I have undiagnosed ADHD, so he reminds me of a lot of things. We put things in a family calendar. I think that active listening and over communication has been really healing too, because I feel like that means you can feel seen, heard, appreciated, valued. When I feel heard, I feel safe. Um, it creates a lot of peace knowing what to expect when he's going to go into the office, or when I need to boot pick up, or when he has flag football or soccer, or when I'm going to be doing a Reiki call. Um, mm, I have find a lot of safety in my marriage, and it's been really, I think when I think if I have lived so many lifetimes, it's probably one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
On that.
He's made me feel safe at the very beginning of our marriage. I think the first thing was I felt safe to be myself fully with him, and that's been the launching pad from there.
And that's a great mention too. And I think, aside from all of the things you just said about over communication and boundaries and safe words and systems, it's a self-awareness of who you are
Mm,
and what you need,
yes.
but more so who you are at the core of who you are. Like, who, so many of us, I think we walk through our life like, who am I? And we can search our entire lifetimes, go to our deathbeds, not really
Yeah.
grasping that. Like,
I feel
who,
like my dad did that. He didn't know. I That's what I feel. Anything that's I think I relate that to emotional availability and vulnerability is like there any resistance to that is also a resistance to know or have awareness. Because if you can't feel what I tell my clients, if you can't know what you're feeling, you can't tell me what you need for your next step. I don't care what you want. I need to know what you need first before we get to the want. Can't run before we can't crawl or walk. Like if you can't tell me, I because it's different energy versus like I think I need this versus I feel I need, because those are two different parts of your body and two different depths. Versus like first layers, I think I need a hug, or I feel I need you to hug me and hold me. It's two different things. And then the receipt of that is going to be different if you were to receive what you asked for. The impact will be different, in my opinion.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was about like manifestation and energy and money and things like that. But you can apply, again, energy is a currency, right? And everything is energy. Everything is energy. And it's like this, what comes to my mind now as we're talking and having this conversation is, what do you have the capacity? What do you have the energetic? What can you energetically hold in your tank? Because we can have this, if we're at an energetic place in our lives where it's like one thing after another, like this snowball effect of this relationship going bad, or um credit card debt. It's like so many things happen simultaneously in all areas or various areas of our lives, and we don't connect the dots that we are the common denominator.
100%.
And it's like, if you only have, again, it comes back to the energy. If your energy is currency and you're putting it in all these unhealthy or unsupportive things, that's what you have energetic currency for. You're not going to have room to let anything else in if it's all going out. Um, and I think that relates to healing too. It's like, if you're looking at your life energetically, like, it's just, I'm just going to suffer. It's just, I have a life. I'm just meant for a life of suffering, because I believed that at one time in my life.
Or just that's the way life is. That's what my mom says.
Yeah. You're
It's
gonna
just
get
the
a
way
life
it
of
is.
suffering. Yeah.
And she really believes that.
That's that is the energy you walk the world with, that you're walking life with, and you're
Yeah.
bringing that to everything.
She
And
tells me, she goes, "You're so lucky." I said, "No, I've made choices."
mm,
And she goes, "I don't get that." I said, she goes, "You're so lucky to have a man like Ryan," or my husband. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention his name. "So lucky to have a husband like yours. Your dad, XYZ." And I'm like, "Stop. He's dead and you've been divorced my entire life.
mhm.
When is a dead horse going to be beaten enough?" Like I made a choice to marry a healthy man based on our healthy relationship. He's a whole person. He's not he's not an abuser. I made that choice. Yes, am I blessed to have this? But I made that choice consciously. So I
And
don't know. I
you
don't
got
I
a
get
match for it.
yeah. I did the work. Like I was the happiest at that point in my life I had ever been when I met him.
Mm.
And he also said that he knew that by dating me and marrying me, his life would never be boring.
That's what I say about my husband.
And I tell everyone, if the I remember his mom asked me, she goes, "Why do you want to marry him?" And I said, "Because I know that no one's ever going to love me any better than him. He is everything." And there's not enough time. I never have enough time with him. I soak up, I still love going on dates with him. Like it's the best. Like and she even says that, she goes, "I love how good of friends you are. You genuinely enjoy your husband's company." Never called my husband a man child or he's my first child. No, I would have never married him.
Mm.
But I never get enough time with him. And I had dated, I had been engaged before. I've been never married before, but how I knew. Like this one's the one for me. Yeah.
I'm just looking through my notes here. You had said on your website, you have a part that says your dad's death, in reference to your dad's death, that it changed me and it woke me up.
Mm.
In what way do you feel like it changed you? And were you asleep in your life? Like the Carolina before and the Carolina after his death, how would you sum those two people up? Because death does change us.
I've thought about this before and deep reflection. A couple of things. My dad's death was 100% the start of my spiritual awakening. I had been a faith girl, I had been a Christian girl, I had been a church goer, but because of his death, I was spiritually curious. I had believed in, I have seen ghosts. I have expelled, I even felt ghosts and an energy in his house where, like, the stereo, if I fell asleep on the couch, it would turn on and blast static sound. It was awful. So his house was definitely haunted. My mom's trailer was haunted. So I had already had the basis of feeling like there was more after you die. I definitely believed in the afterlife and the spiritual realm. I'd never I'd been to a couple in Miami. You can go to um Santeria is very real. So rich witches, like, are very prevalent. You can find them. I have been to a witch before. Usually, so if you're in a Cuban neighborhood, so if you need they call it baños, like if you need a bath or like a spell, everyone's at least gone once. So in your like early 20s or in your teenagers, you do stuff. So I had been to, and I was like, "Oh, this shit's real." So I had a little bit of a curiosity with that. So when he died, I was very curious to know what happened to them. And I was like, he can't just not exist anymore. My love for him, so strong. His love for me just does not exist. I don't believe that. Because I've had dreams like of my abuela who had died. And I was like, this can't be the end. Like my dad believed ashes to ashes, dirt to dirt. Like he really believed nothing.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, okay. And like he didn't really care where his ashes ended up. Like his ashes are at my feet. They're in his urn. Like I keep it under my desk. I move it around. Anyway, I started taking classes with the local psychic. She offered like spirit guides, aliens. She would teach about guardian angels, how to talk to people who've passed, oracle cards. And I was starting to take these classes. Um, and then I got a reading from her right before our wedding. My dad died in April. We got engaged in September. We got married in December of that year. So from the time that he proposed to the time we got married, it was very fast. It was 90 days. Just because we wanted to be married. Um, and right before our wedding, I got the reading. It was Thanksgiving time frame, and she just said there would be certain things that would happen on our wedding day, because my biggest sadness going into the wedding, or my biggest grief, was that he wasn't going to walk me down the aisle. And the wedding was beautiful, and there were certain things that happened that day that she said his presence would be known, and there's still things that happened that we don't know. Like there was a medallion placed that several people commented on this table on the beach where we had poured the sand, and the pastor stood in front of. I didn't see it. It's not in any of the photos, but several guests had commented on it. My cousin goes, "Did you see that medallion that was on there? Where did that come from?" And I was like, "What are you talking? I never saw it. It's not in any of the pictures." But several people on the wedding are like, "What was that medallion? What was that? Was that a coin?" I was like, "I have no idea." But that was on the table in front of everyone. And there was only like 25, 30 people at the ceremony. So that was one thing. The sky was perfectly blue and with white clouds. And we got married in front of the lighthouse he used to take us all to. He took them when he was married, and then he took me. So this is a special place for us. And we got married there in a way to honor him. Um, but my spiritual awakening was just so that I could talk to him. So all this exploration, all these workshops, all of these psychic readings was for me continue to hear from him. Then I had a hard time coping not talking to him. So I thought if I became a spiritual medium, and I believed when someone said like everyone's a psychic, you just turn it off. I was like, well, okay, I'm going to start taking this seriously. And I just started to have experiences with him. Like I would feel, I would have certain moments, and this is before the horse fall. And this is before I had two horses. This is before the first horse died. I would go to the barn and I would cry on her. And it was during usually these drives on these gravel roads that I would have these experiences. I remember my right thigh got very cold, and I was sobbing. Um, and I would play different songs to make me think of him. And I was just like, I just miss you. I don't understand why this is my life now without you. And um, I would just go to the barn and I would cry. I would just stand and cry on my horse. And she was everything to me. And it was through that connection that I'd experiences, little things like that. And then I started to smell him climbing up my apartment stairs. And I took a workshop on clair abilities, and which is like clear cognizance, clear sentience, clear audience. Like you can hear things, a vision, you can see things, symbols. I started learning about angel numbers, and it started playing weird things like My Girl was our song. And I'd be walking through the office and then I would just hear My Girl playing. And it would just be like, just little things that he would send me. And it was like, okay, there's something to this. So then I started getting repeated. I would hear that often and in random places because My Girl's a very specific
Mhm.
song. I would hear it at Walmart on the speaker, or it'd be somebody's ringtone, or it would play on my radio in the car. Mind you, this is 2012, so this is 2014. So it's a very different time than like I still listen to the radio and stuff versus like Spotify now. But then I got Reiki attuned, and with every Reiki attunement, my mediumship, my ability to channel got deeper and stronger. And when I started to use oracle cards, I could start to channel with him. I started intuitively journaling, and he would show up in every medium I would try. So it wasn't just straight senses of clear abilities and symbols. It was also using like my dad had a very specific BO. So like it was Old Spice and old man smell. So like when I smelled that, I was climbing up the apartment stairs that I had just moved into, and I was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding. And I was like, and the light flickered. I was like, okay. So now I have learned to believe occurrences. Um, so, and I can feel him when he's around and when he's not around. He's not always around. So, my dad's death led me to stretch me to believe that I was possible to. I had the desire to want to communicate with him, which meant I needed to become a medium, which then led me to um channel spirit babies I am doing now. I believe that because of my desire to continue to talk to him is what led me to my ability to channel. Because then when I started to channel professionally in paid sessions, I could talk to other loved ones. I could, and then I was in Reiki sessions. I was working with moms who've lost babies, and they were grieving the losses of stillborn or medically terminated or ectopic or a chemical pregnancy or a failed fertility treatment or an embryo transfer that didn't work out. Connecting to those babies was the end result. Um, what what Carolina was before my dad's death, she was a lot more carefree.
Mm.
She was a lot lighter. Meaning like or oblivious. Um, a lot more carefree. I was a less healed, less considerate. I was very caring, but I was not as careful as I am, or very not self-aware as I am now, obviously. But I also didn't have a relationship with healing other than talk therapy. And I was very much stuck in a dysregulated nervous system, seeking everyone else's approval to get validated, and had no self love and no self confidence. Everything was, if I work hard, I'll work harder. And then that's how I got stuff. Um, there was not much self relationship other than work hard, do what people tell you. Honesty will get you far. Pray, and try to have some fun sprinkled in. So I think I'm probably cutting myself short a little bit, but now it's a lot more. I feel like just it's just light and day. I can genuinely say I'm happy most of the time, and I love who I am. I love the life I'm living versus before. I took a job because it was my first big girl job after graduating. I graduated at 29 and got a job shortly after, moved from Florida to Nebraska, didn't know anyone. And it was because I wanted to start over. But I think she was strong, but just didn't have a lot of self awareness or a lot of love for herself.
I think what sums up what you just shared is if you want to heal, get to know yourself.
Mm. It's true.
Connect to yourself, right?
Thanks. Sorry, that was pretty long-winded.
No, it's beautiful, but that's what I hear in what all that you shared, and even just my personal experience. It's like
Thank you.
if we give ourselves the time and attention, like really, it's our inner child, right? It's
Yes, as an inner child. When I moved to Omaha, I didn't know anyone, so I was like, I was so lonely, and I didn't wanna I'm not much of a drinker, and all my coworkers, they drank because that's what you do in the Midwest.
Mhm,
And that's where you meet people. Like, "Where do you get a boyfriend? Go to a bar."
mhm.
I can't hold my liquor. I'm such a lightweight. So I started making a bucket list and playing visitor in my city, and Omaha is a great city. I love it so much. And I was like, I had disposable income for the first time. And I was like, what am I going to do with all this money? So I went on Craigslist and I said, what is the thing that I always wanted to do? I was like, this is my yes season because I was so lonely. Like I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I want to have some fun. So I found a trainer that was doing $25 horse lessons, and I would go because I always wanted a horse. Like I dreamt of horses. I would look up before I left Miami, I would look up how much horses cost, how much could they, how much does it cost to board? I was like, that's a nonsense. I can't afford that. So then I was like, oh, I can afford $25 horse lessons. Well, 3 months in, I bought the bought the lesson horse, and and she was the greatest thing that I had ever loved. And the joke was I love the horse more than my husband when we got married. And my husband still jokes, he goes, if she was still around, she would still outrank me. She was my heart horse. Her name was Cheyenne. And that horse carried me for years, like from, oh gosh, 2012 to 2014 or 2015. I loved her so much. She was amazing. And um my inner child wanted a pony, wanted a horse so much. And I bought her. And she was in my engagement photos. Like I'm still crying about it. Like the vet became a good friend to my husband and I, and he goes, I'm sorry to tell you this. It was kind of hurtful. He goes, I think you killed your horse. And I was like, I didn't. Now what are you talking about? He goes, you cried so much on her. She ended up having asthma, and she couldn't eat and breathe like she couldn't eat and breathe at the same time. And no matter for several months of steroids and treatment, her quality of life wasn't very good anymore. And we just couldn't, and her cough was so bad. We the vet said the most humane thing was to put her down. So that was the hardest thing ever. But it was so grieving her, uh, that the first 2 years of our marriage were shitty. I don't remember a lot other than those moments. Like my dad died, we got engaged, we got married, we settled this date, my horse died. That was the order in the which things happened. And we were trying to have a baby. And, things,
You didn't have
just
the energetic capacity for a baby at the
no, I
time.
didn't. No, but with my horse dying, I think that was even harder. I think when I think about the grief from the court case or this date settlement was harder than actually losing my dad,
Mm.
fighting with them. Um, and but the grief of losing my horse, oh God, because she carried me, and it was like a child to me. And having a relationship with a horse and riding them and training them and caring for them, especially if they're sick and it's your first horse, an animal that large, and I have dogs now, and I've had cats. It's very different than my relationship with dogs because it's a very dangerous sport. Um, it's a lot of trust building, there's a lot of energy that goes into a horse person relationship. So
Well,
grieving her was really hard.
they say that emotionally, horses are the most similar to humans emotionally.
I quit horses. I still had the second horse, but he was a butthole. And he was too much horse for me. And whereas the first horse, she made me overly confident, but she really was such a good horse. She made up for my incompetence. Um, so the second one, uh, we had a love-hate relationship, but he ended up hurting his leg and he had to be put down too, in 2017. Yeah. So we had him for a while, but he was so old, I couldn't he just became a lawn ornament. So, I gave him treats. He was so ornery. I loved him, but I hated him. It wasn't the same. I was kind of resentful after she died. I was like, I'm stuck with you. So,
Isn't that
and
interesting how you described your dad? You didn't say the word ornery, but you said stubborn.
does that, no, it's describing my horse.
Right, but that's how you described your dad. Like not ornery, but you meant described
Oh,
your
my
dad
dad was ornery.
stubborn.
Oh, my dad was stubborn. Yeah. But this horse was like, he was like the one of my bad boyfriends. Like he was so good looking.
Oh,
Like he was so gorgeous that as soon as you're about to get over him, he'll do something really nice, but then like a little bit later he'll turn around and do something really shitty. So like he would do things like bite me, or like I'm grooming him, or I'm cinching up the saddle to ride. He'd come around and try to bite me, and or he would nip me. Like he just loved to bite me. I was like, why are you? Or like he'd push me and I'd fall down. He was 16 hands high. He was huge. Um,
maybe he was never taught how to be gentle. You know what I mean?
no,
Like if
he
we're
picked
thinking
on me. He was perfect for other
he was
people.
a bully, huh? Oh,
Other people would write him that were more like I was a novice and that were like good writers in our barn. They're like, oh my God, he's such a good boy. Or he would fake trip to like scare me while we were trail riding. And then he would just like look at me like he hated my husband. So he stepped on my husband's foot and he looked at me while he was doing it and pressing his foot down. Yeah, no, like his name was
wow.
Bucks Mosby and he was an asshole.
Well, we meet assholes in our human relationships. I
Oh,
guess we meet them in the animal world too, right?
yes. It was like, but he loved treats.
My youngest, we just watched a video just the other day of her. She must have been maybe three, I say around 3 years old, 3 or 4. And I had asked her on the video, I said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And she said, "A vet." Wait, I want to be a cowgirl. And she has wanted a horse and dreamt of horses and horse since she was itty bitty. And so I imagine one day she'll be just like you and have her own horse. And she's actually planning to go to vet school. So she's a sophomore in high school and she wants to be a vet and she's going to pursue that. So
Good for her. I
I
think
doubt she'll have a horse for five.
I would if I could have the first horse again, I would do horses again.
Yeah.
But because I've gotten a lot of questions like you're gonna get another horse? No. Nebraska winters can be brutal. And we boarded, they have a shelter, but they're best if they're in a herd. So not like stalled. So our horses would have a barn that they could fully go into as a herd, and then they would also have free access to go out. Like, but I had older horses, they required extra care and not just like shots and floating their teeth and all that. Like they need to be blanketed. That's very controversial, but like to keep weight on, to keep all those things. And in Nebraska, you can have 3 or 4 seasons in a day. And like depending on our winters, we've had winters where it would snow, but then it would get really warm. And if they sweat underneath their blanket, it's bad. Like, and it could ruin their coat and all of these things. So like to go out there, put the blanket on, take it off again, and it be in cold and like also be, are you close enough to the barn? I just
Mm.
don't want to do that anymore. But if we had the first horse, I guarantee you I'd be still horse girl. But if it was for the second one ruined me. I think that's why I only had one kid. Like I was like, this pregnancy, this birth was really rough. I don't want to do this again. And we had talked about only having one kid, but I was like, if it's anything like the horses, I don't want to gamble this, bro. I don't. We're good. We're good. We have 3 dogs. We're good.
That brings up a
One kid,
question.
3 dogs.
That brings up a question for me. I'm glad you mentioned that because you essentially grew up as an only child.
Oh yeah.
So, what does that bring up for you as your son being an only child?
Oh God, he would give anything to have a sibling. He asked if we could adopt, if we could foster. We talked about those. We were very open. I was like, listen, the fact I literally said, I was like, my ability to have a baby, this factory is closed. It was very difficult to achieve you. Um, and he goes, why can't we just go save a baby? I was like, it doesn't work that way. It's like we had to talk about like, that it costs a lot of money to adopt, to foster. And I was like, we really like the way our family is now. And then I was like, so like really trying to understand his need for a sibling. Essentially, he wants to belong. He wants someone that's like him.
Mm.
So what we've done to mitigate that is we've made extra efforts to, my husband has a brother, and I will move mountains to, even if it's just for a day. We live in different states. My in-laws live in Kansas now. They used to live here. So they live in Wichita, and my brother-in-law lives in Fort Worth. So I will move efforts so that he can have cousin time, visits, to get that sibling time that's as close as possible. But my husband, he was very adamant coming into our marriage that he only wanted one child, and I was like, I think I would want one or two. Let's see how it goes with one. And then as we had went through everything, um, he very much wanted to only have one child, and he's like, "You've had really bad child experience, like sibling experiences." He has his own, he had a very good childhood, but he has his own feelings about certain topics. So, for his privacy, we discussed, and he's like, we both decided collectively just one child. But I am in strong opinion our son will probably have like 7 or 8 children. He loves babies. He has already told me he wants to be a dad, and he goes, when I have a family, he's already thinking about it. I think it's because we talk about babies all the time and people having babies because of what I do. We got another Reiki baby. And I had to describe like IVF is they have to have surgery sometimes to have the baby. Babies are made different ways. And he's like, well, when I'm 17, I'm gonna have a family. I'm gonna be a dad. I was like, let's wait a little bit longer. He told me that 2 days ago. He goes, when I'm
Oh my
17,
gosh.
he wants to be a dad. Do you have to go to college to be a dad? No, you don't.
You go through college as you're being a dad. I swear, it's like that's a
But I
university you never get out of.
but I think I am actively working on being more. I think I have a good I think as an adult, sometimes it can be really hard to be a kid again. But I think as a parent of an intentionally only child, you have to be their playmate at times. And I watched a creator on TikTok say that he was an only child and the consequences and how lonely it was. So I only became aware of this because he is now older. Um, I mean, he's still very young, but I am actively trying my like over the past month. I realized like he told me he at the end of summer he says I'm pretty lonely. Jam packing, play dates, creating community. Community was really important to us, but like having regular play dates with the same people so there's more of a kinship there. I think is going to be the best I can do. We have 3 dogs. I hope that helps him.
Well,
Um,
and to help him, we need a community, right? As adults, like we
right.
thrive in community, and kids are no different. And so it's helping him find his people. You know,
Yeah,
if
I
there's certain
noticed that
interests. Yeah.
we tried soccer for the first time in the spring as an invitation from a preschool friend. and to continue that relationship. And I was like, oh my gosh, look how much more productive we are on a Saturday. Look, I made a friend who doesn't even speak English. We share the same name. She's from Ukraine. And I learned to use Google Translate, and our world exploded in the best ways, with like new connections. So I think understanding the need for him to feel like he belongs somewhere is what I think it is, and that he has a connection with someone. So me actively working on that part,
Mhm.
um, I think will kind of,
Enrich his life.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we may not be able to do this, but I am like, he may not understand the emotional you need is you want to feel connected. You want to feel like you belong. You want to feel like you have something with someone. And I'm creating that in different spots. So it's not all in one pot too. That's very strategic. So if like something goes south with school friends, he still has sport friends and he still has play date friends that are all not in the same bucket.
Yeah, my youngest too, she just had a family moved here, and now they're all about the horses together, and they share the same interests, and she's found, she was struggling, I think, for a while there to try and find somebody that had the same similar interests, as her. And so
That
yeah,
can do wonders. He's
yeah,
really into
I've seen
Pokemon.
yeah, you
Yeah.
see them coming out of their shell more so.
Yeah, we have he made a friend in his class, um and he's also into Pokemon, and he has he needs special attention throughout the day. And Ollie has sought him out, and he goes, I like being his friend because he needs me, and he also likes Pokemon. And so we've done play dates with this kid, and he's so sweet. And I've seen Ollie just light up. Oh my, trying not to say names, but I've seen my son light up so much because of the shared interest and the depth of like, do you have this card? Do you have the evolved form? So much. I know so much about Pokemon, but you know, and they just light up different than another, like, cause it's something that they really care about.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. My son would probably hate me for mentioning this on a podcast, but he's into Pokemon.
Really.
He's 19.
You'd be surprised. I
I think
looked up
there's
there's a lot of grown adults who do it. Pokemon Go. We're learning to battle. I'm not really sure. I'm trying to get people to answer my questions on like how to build a deck so he can go to one of the tournaments, and their website doesn't work. Oh goodness. I'm
now
in a Facebook group with grown men.
really.
Like
I mean, it's like,
trying
and he's been collecting these since he was a kid. So he's 19. So
it's okay.
12
My
plus years, 10 years for sure, 10 plus years. He's got a lot of cards. And he'll show me the ones he's really proud of and he's been looking up how much they're worth. And so he's got quite the collection.
We go to trading events. That's as far as we've gotten, but we have 3 binders, and I've organized them by evolve form with him. And down the street, there was a little bully down the street, and he kept saying how much he has like these V stars. And I'm like, what's a V star, Ollie? What is that? He goes, well, so and so says that he have 10 and I only have 2. And I was like, and he said some mean things to me. I was like, let's go on eBay. And I'm a spiteful human. And I bought, I was like, is this one good? I was like, we can't spend like $20 on a card, but we can spend a couple dollars on a card. And I ordered like, I'm not kidding you, 14 or 15. I ordered, I don't, so many V stars so that the next time they battled, he had just 2 pages full of V stars. And I was like, you go show that little kid how many V stars you have. But it was not my finest parenting moment, but I was like, you want it? And my husband's like, you're taking this a little too far. I was like, no, this kid's going down. Ollie came home crying, and I was like, no,
Not having this.
not having this. We will be victorious every day. The game for eBay would drop like in these little white envelopes. I'm so excited to go get the mail. Yes.
My son loves it too, getting the mystery packs. It's like
Oh,
Christmas, you never know
have
what
you
you're.
watched a live stream of those?
I'm sure he has. He's like the
Oh my
YouTube.
gosh. We've gone on TikTok and we've watched these people unbox stuff. It's wild.
It's yeah, there's just like Reiki, it's like you kind of feel like a unicorn sometimes when you're into the energy work and especially probably in the Midwest, that's I'm glad, we kind of talked about that, but being in the Midwest, it's not something we're not as like progressive, right? So, did you ever feel like like it's like grown men adults who love Pokemon. They're probably kind of in the closet a little bit. It's like, didn't you ever feel like that? Like when you first like really got into
Oh,
energy work and
super. Especially
yeah.
when I was still working corporate. I quit corporate about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. So I've been doing Reiki for 7 years, and it was something I was really proud of, but also like really skirtish because I had also lost a lot of people who told me I was doing the devil's work. So I
Mm,
was really kind of like in the closet about it because of how people reacted. But now there's like a huge movement. There's a lot of spiritual practitioners in Omaha. Um, that are very open, and now it's like fun to manifest, but it wasn't like that in 2017.
no.
Like if you used a pendulum, you were going to hell. And I my best friend actually last August, we went to visit her last July. So last August she said, I'm really scared for your soul. You're going straight to hell. I'm like, dude, this is not new. Like, I've been doing this forever. Um, but I was like, okay. And she's like, "Well, are you gonna stop it or do you want to be my best friend?" So I was like, "Bro, I've known you since I was 20. If you're not into this, that's okay. I'll love you from afar. But I don't believe in hell. I just believe in the other side. But if you think that's what's happening to me, then you don't have to be a part of the show. You don't have to be part of this party." And we parted. So for me now, it took me a long time to really be like, yeah, I'm a psychic medium, but it took, I think, time. It took years for me to be like, get over those losses and like for me to stand strong and like this is my life purpose. And I think I just needed proven evidence over time and time and time again, when and to make like to have I think the more legitimate I really proven myself as into like my branding, my marketing, like just it's made me feel more legitimate.
Mhm.
And when I switched from in person to online right before COVID happened, I quit seeing people in person. I got more confident. I was like, Omaha is too small for me. I think that's also why I went online, was just like, there's only so many people who are open to this. And I feel like if I go online, I'll find more people. I'm meant for the world. That's what I told myself. And that's essentially what's happened. I started the podcast and I've met so many people. Um, and we have 18,000 followers on TikTok, and we're globally ranked every day with our podcast, the Make a Baby Hugger podcast. So I don't hide anymore. Like either you like me, and I'm not going to convince you. Either I'm like, here's a FAQ question. If you want to go look what it is, great. But I don't convince anyone that they should do this. If you're curious, I'll talk to you. But that's not my mission to convince you to do this.
And if
But
you're
if you're
curious,
curious, I'll have a conversation with you. But I'm not going to convince you to do anything. That's not my problem, not my job, not my circus, not my monkeys. It's certainly not going to own that problem.
and if you are curious, it's probably the universe like knocking you on the head.
Yeah, I
'Cause
love
that's how
curious
Reiki
people.
found me too. Like I kept hearing Reiki, 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 and I'm like, what's this Reiki? And I would talk to people, and then I went through Reiki 1 and 2, and then I got my Reiki master, and then I went through Karuna Holy Fire Reiki, and so that's
What
I'm
do you
a
think of Holy Fire Karuna? I love that. That one changed my life. The Karuna. I
mhm.
like that one. And I did perfect. I was like, I need the professional certification. So I took it with a licensed
Yep.
ICRT teacher. I need that certificate,
I
that
do.
level of certificate. I couldn't be like a regular person.
Well, I didn't go through the licensing, but I was trained, like my Reiki master teacher was one of 30. licensed Reiki
Yeah,
master.
no, that's who you went, like,
Yeah.
so you can get, like, this special certificate. That's
Yeah.
what I really, really wanted. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. It was my Reiki, I think it was my Reiki 2. I had a really profound experience, and that kind of like solidified the deal for me, um, for my healing, personal healing. And
Yeah.
then I went into biofield tuning. So now I use tuning forks, which is
Really? Ooh, I've never played with tuning forks.
my friend. That is, for me personally, in my opinion, it's more bang for your buck. It is
Ooh, tell me more.
it is really deep. It really matches the energy work that I want to be doing with people to help people really move through stuff, because
Eh.
it yeah, biofield tuning. Um
Oh, we're gonna have to chat after this.
yes, I would love to. But yeah, it's that has been
You should come on my podcast.
I would love to.
Let's
I
do
would love
that.
to. Yeah.
Juicy. Done.
So yeah, it's enabled me to do the work that I do with grievers, and I know what's not mine, and I didn't know that in the beginning, especially, and I'm maybe
It's really
you
hard to
experienced that too.
decipher.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is. It's like, oh,
Like,
I'd
what am
be
I
so
feeling as this
drained
comes
and
up? Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not I gotta clear my stuff.
100%.
Mhm. Yeah. It's energy work has enabled me to do the work that I do with grief and talking to grievers, and because people,
Moving
"That's
it
not
out.
depressing. That's so depressing." And I'm like, "Grief is my jam. Like, I could talk about it all the live long day. I
People are
never
like,
get
"Don't."
bored of it."
Yeah, I hear stories of loss. I worked with a person yesterday who did a termination at 25 weeks, which is really difficult to go for a person to go through. My husband's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's gonna make my decaf."
Mm,
And I was like, it just becomes, I was like, I can hold space for a lot because I've gone through a lot, but I also can appreciate her pain. I
mhm,
can see, like, I can hold space for it because, but it's not my story. I've done like enough. I've had enough practice to hold it apart from me and also know, be grounded going into it and then cleanse after. Understand what I'm feeling is enough practice of know who's talking to me when I'm in the session.
mhm.
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you ever gotten attuned to another lineage of Reiki or only Holy Fire?
Only Holy Fire.
I got attuned to Crystal Reiki, and then I got certified in Reiki for childbirth.
Oh,
And then what I've settled on was Kundalini Reiki.
mm.
I found this woman on
Incorporates breath
TikTok.
work?
I'm sorry, what?
Does she incorporates breath work? Like breath
No, it's just basically there's a few different symbols with the Kundalini Reiki. It's more potent and it's easier for like with my practice with I have traditional Usui, Reiki, Crystal Reiki, the Holy Fire, 1, 2 Reiki Master in Karuna, and then I did childbirth in there, and then I did Kundalini last. I did this 2 years ago. She doesn't teach, like, chakras, she doesn't teach anything about cord cutting. She gives you the attunement and gives you a packet, and was $50 for every attunement, for the 3 attunements, and, she does everything virtually over Zoom, and I found her on TikTok, and I had seen a video about Kundalini, and I became very interested in Mother Earth, like, obsessed with her, and then the Kundalini awakening, and I started to dive into, I had a student and also a dear friend who I was training in Holy Fire Reiki Master.
Mhm,
And and then she eventually went on to Karuna. And I was like, she was studying Sanskrit and she was discussing like the true meanings of some of the words. And I was like, and she's like, I don't feel very settled by this. And when we were having this discussion, I was like, well, I've been playing with Kundalini. Do you want to, do you want to come over to my side? Do you want this? And we played with that together. And I just find it more organic. It's less, I can get more done in a short amount of time. Like, I can do, like, a 10-minute session, and it feels like as if I had done with Karuna for 30.
Hmm.
So it feels also just if it Karuna felt feminine, and I still love Karuna, but this feels like the most feminine for me. And it's just very, very simple. Um, it doesn't have all the symbols, but it does have some symbols, but, and it has different, like, DNA, diamond, it has all these other things on the Reiki master, but that's what I mainly practice now. Um, and I don't know, it feels sparkly. It just flows easier for me. It feels lighter when I'm done with the session too. Like, when I have to, like, cleanse myself after a session, I feel lighter. It's not like it's easier for me to move through sessions if I have to do several a day. I'm less tired at the end of the day.
Sounds interesting.
We should play together. Tell me
Yeah.
about your forks. I'll tell you
Tell me
about Kundalini.
about that. Yeah. We'll have to yeah, we'll have to connect after. And it's what's funny is that before we even started recording, we joked about this not being a 2-hour podcast.
Has it been 2
And
hours?
here we are, an hour and 57 minutes.
Shut up. That's funny.
So, you are
Oh
probably
goodness, it's 1 o'clock.
the longest podcast, and I've enjoyed every minute of
Me
it.
too.
I think it was we went to a lot of different places, and there's a lot of stuff on here I haven't asked, but I think in a lot of ways you answered for me. Uh I mean, you kind of went into the medium and how you kind of came. Yeah, I think you answered all the questions I had. That
Mhm.
switches bizarro. So
Not
yeah,
in my world.
um, but let me end with this. What gives you hope for the future?
For my future or just future in general?
What gives you hope for, I don't know, the collective, however you want to answer that, however you interpret that?
Um, that you can redeem yourself at any time. You can
Ooh,
start over at any time. Last night, I led a circle, uh, a womb activation inside our membership, and I said, "What is the most fearless, most fertile version of you? What is she like?" And somebody said that they smiled knowingly that they were having the redemptive pregnancy and birth. And that word was so powerful for me. I cried and I got goosebumps. Um, and I love that how many times I can always start over. And that gives me hope that I have that. And I like that I could always redeem myself. Um, because I love myself enough and I love unconditionally the people around me, and I've learned to love unconditionally. And because of that, I can always apologize and start over. I can always forgive myself, and I can always start over and do better and try again. And I think that that has allowed me to have hope that if I make a mistake, I'll do better. I won't repeat it. And that gives me hope. And because that means I can always be better. And without mistakes, I will not grow. Um, and I have a firm belief that whatever I am, my dad taught me this. He goes, whatever you are is the baseline of what your children will be. He goes, so make sure you're really great. And I feel like I am doing what I was meant to do in this lifetime. And I hope if that is true, that my son sees that, then I can only imagine what he's going to set intentions for to make the world a better place because he can always start over. because he loves himself enough that he can forgive himself if he has to forgive. He can grow and expand. He can redeem himself again. And I think starting over also feels very fresh, and that's exciting. So when I don't know if I would have answered that before yesterday. I think just being loved probably would have been being loved by my husband and my son would have been my answer before yesterday.
I can tell you what your answer was before yesterday.
Oh shit, are you serious?
Yeah, because I asked it on my form.
Oh my God, that's so exciting.
If I can find it. When I think what would they really want from me in the X situation, then I sit with that and proceed. It makes it easier to be fearless and go live the life I want. I think there's more, but I don't know if it cut off. Your answer today was perfect. It was beautiful.
Thanks.
And it sounds like the antidote for shame too.
Yeah. Yeah. You can always start over. I didn't think a lot of people put like if you have to start over, like it's a like it you don't have to start over all the way at point X. You're just starting over where you are now.
Mhm.
So it's easier because uh, you're evolved. You're not starting over at the very beginning. You're starting evolved from a further point. I think people underrate how good it can be to start over. And you can start over just by a new day or the first of the month or the first of the year. I mean, that's why everyone does New Year's resolutions, right?
Yeah,
You can start over mid-afternoon or at 1:13 in the afternoon.
I love
I
that.
think that's really hopeful.
Where can people reach you if they'd like to connect with you?
I think Instagram is the easiest. My handle is the Carolina, like North and South, Sotomayor, Sotomayor, or my website, carolinasotomayor.com. Um, or you can, I think messaging and DMing me on Instagram is either. You can follow me on TikTok and YouTube. We're pretty active on YouTube too. Um, we're
And
active on
your
most
podcast,
things. Oh, my podcast. Yeah. Listen to the podcast. I forgot about that one.
Making a
Uh,
Baby.
Make a Baby podcast.
The Reiki.
We are into making babies. We make babies with Reiki is our tagline. We're 2 years old and we're a little over 6,000 downloads. So uh, we're slow and steady. We would love for you to take a listen. We come out weekly at minimum. Sometimes like this week we're doing it impromptu. We're going to post every day just because we're doing a healing challenge inside the membership. But yeah, come and join us. Yeah. And if you're with listeners once, I can give you the link. They can try the membership out for 3 days for
Okay.
free if they want to come and join us. You can
Uh,
try it out before deciding if they want to stay or not.
yeah, pass along the link. I'll put that in the
Yeah.
show.
I'll email it to you right away.
Yeah, along with your contact information. And thank you
Absolutely.
so much. I feel like this was I say it's a lot, but when this is what's so important to me with this podcast is to be able to give people the time and the space to go deep, to really
Mm.
share the story, to for me to develop a connection with you so that my listeners feel a connection with you. And I think that's so important to me. And so thank you for um, coming to my podcast
It's
and
a true honor.
sharing and allowing me to sit with you through your stories.
Thank you so much for listening and having me.
And remember, when you unleash your heart, you unleash your life. Much love.